Hi there guys, and welcome to today's live stream. We're going to be talking all about why you have back pain, a little bit about if this is your very first episode of back pain, you've never had it before, you're looking through YouTube or Facebook trying to deal with the problem as best as possible, or if you're someone that's had back pain, you're maybe going through rehab at the moment or have just had a relapse from a history of back pain. So we'll cover why you have it, and then more importantly, just give you some really important information and tips so you can make sure you can avoid it worsening and really get back on the road to recovery as quickly as possible. And before we get into this, just want to thank you all for joining as you do each day. If you've got any questions or any particular topics you guys want us to cover or queries that you have, then please do put those in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube and Facebook. We've got Lara the other side of the computer, and she's going to be reading those questions out at the end of the live stream. So we'll go through those and answer any questions that you guys do have. And again, as always, please do consider subscribing, share this with people that you think might find it helpful. This is our way of helping you during this lockdown, and it's really important, and as you'll see in today's live stream actually, that you get the right information if you've got back pain or neck pain or anything like that. You get the right information so you can take the right steps to get it resolved quickly, because this stops it becoming chronic. And there are so many easy ways of avoiding things getting worse when it comes to things like back pain. So do please share that with people that might find a little bit of help. So I've already kind of mentioned it. We're going to go through why do you have back pain the first time? A little bit of education around that first and foremost, and then talking about relapses. So whether this is you're halfway through a rehab process and your back pain comes back, or whether you've not had back pain for a little while and then it's come back as sort of a reoccurrence rather than a relapse in the recovery process. So hopefully you find it helpful. And if you've got any questions along the way, as I said, do put those in the comments section, and we'll read those out at the end and do our best to answer those as helpfully as possible. So first and foremost, I wanted to use the example because our bodies are really, really very strong. They're very robust and really adaptive and capable of dealing with all sorts of stresses and strains. And you should always understand that no matter who you are, no matter what your history of back pain is, your body is really remarkable. And if we compare it to a rock, for example, or the cliffs of Dover, whatever it may be, rock is very, very strong. But something as soft and as gentle as rain, when it persistently beats down on those rocks over time, it causes them to crumble, deform, and lose their structural integrity. And this is one of the main principles when it comes to first getting your back pain. The problem builds up. Like I've put the main points on the side of me just here. Yeah, and I'll cover those. The problem builds up. When that rain is beating down on those rocks for years and years over time, the problem builds up and the bits of rock fall off. And in your body, repetitive stress and strain on that lower back, using our bodies in inappropriate or bad ways through excessive sitting, moving into a desk-based job, or times like now with the lockdown where we're doing not nearly enough good things for our body and much in the way of bad things, slouching on the sofa, those sorts of things, because we can't get out. These repetitive stresses, in my experience, seeing patients, are primarily the cause of these back pains. It's very, very rare that it's actually a one-off trauma, a serious incident in an otherwise healthy individual that's resulted in back pain. Those are normally reserved for the sporting arenas or for sheer accidents. You fell off a ladder at work or something like that. And those are unfortunate. They're really difficult. However, what I will say is sometimes, or actually more than sometimes, those patients actually do remarkably well, because it's not the bad habits that have led to the back pain, but it's been a freak accident. And a lot of the things that we have to overcome in the patient where it's built up over a long period of time don't have to be accounted for, because they're not there. Those bad habits are not there in that healthy person, and therefore we don't have a lot of unlearning of bad habits to do. That being said, quite often there is a trigger event, a minor trigger event, and I don't care who you are or who's told you differently. Bending over to put your socks on is not significant to cause a disc to fracture. It is just not significant at all. Our body is much stronger than that. And if you have an otherwise healthy spine, it was not bending over to pick your socks up. It wasn't picking up your newborn baby. It wasn't putting your shoes on. It wasn't, all those sorts of silly things that people attribute to their back pain being being caused, it's not those. Those trigger events are often very mild. They're the straw that broke the camel's back, as the phrase goes. And if you tie too or place too much emphasis on those particular activities, then you kind of end up going into a sort of a downward spiral, trying to wonder, why is my back so fragile? I only put my socks on. And that's really, really unhelpful in the recovery process, because it leads to just false beliefs that aren't serving you in any meaningful way, and then definitely not helping you get better. And then the last part is when these events do eventually unfold, you do make that little last trigger event that causes the back pain. We have misinformation. We have a lot of information out there. Even in my opinion, when it comes to dealing with the lower back, I've mentioned in a live stream the other day, stuff even on the NHS website telling people to hug their knees and look down as aggressively as they can. And then they come and join our membership site and say, well, I did all that stuff, it didn't work, and I tried this and it works, and it's exactly the opposite. So I won't get too much into why those things aren't good and why they're recommended, because we can do that on other videos. But suffice to say that when you do injure your back for the first time, dealing with it correctly is really, really important, because misinformation can lead you to making it worse. And that's why YouTube can be helpful. It's giving you a series of exercises to think about, but there does need to be that explanation behind the recommendation as to why you're being instructed to do what you're doing. Because the person doing those videos to try and be helpful, and all of the YouTube videos or Facebook or whatever, will be people trying to help you by providing you with exercise options to deal with your back pain, neck pain, ankle pain, whatever it is. But they don't necessarily have the time to do the explanation. And it's that explanation that helps you, as the sufferer of back pain trying to alleviate it, understand the whether or not this exercise is applicable to you, and understand the justification rationale. And that's partially why we are trying to do these live streams and have been doing them. I think this is, Lara said, this is number 36. So we've done them every single weekday for the whole of lockdown. And it's something we'll continue to do, because we think that the idea is that it helps you guys understand your backs better, so that you don't get caught in some of the very unfortunate positions some of our patients find themselves in when they first visit us. So it's a lot easier if we can avoid you guys getting caught into that trouble by avoiding the misinformation and understanding how to approach your back pain more effectively. And if you do this right, when you first get back pain, you will have a nice smooth transition out of back pain, rehabilitate properly, and have binned a lot of the bad habits that have led to that back pain in the first place. And you'll also be more aware, because sometimes we do silly things, we do have accidents, and I'm going to cover that in this next segment in terms of what we should do to avoid relapses, and what happens or what is happening when we do get a relapse. So for the patient, or for you watching this and you've had back pain in the past and maybe it's just come back recently, or if you're partway through a rehabilitation process, maybe you're in our premium membership and you're doing your exercise as well, but you want to avoid having a relapse, this is really for you right now. So the main failing of people in getting that relapse is a lack of knowledge of the healing process. Quite often people don't have an appreciation for what is injured. And that's partially because you normally ring up the GP or someone like that, or go to see so-and-so, whatever profession they are, and they say, oh, it's just a muscle, you'll be fine. And then you think it's a muscle. Well, muscle injuries do heal remarkably quickly because of the vascularization. They've got a very good blood supply. They're very, very good responsive reactive tissue, and they will heal very quickly. But if it's ligamentous tissue in nature, that takes a long time to heal. So not understanding that perhaps the pain has subsided completely, but the injury is still there, the recovery process still needs to take place, that is, the lack of that knowledge is a real downfall. And we try and encourage or explain that to you guys so you can have an appreciation for that, because that's probably the very first thing you need to know. It takes a little while longer to heal. Sometimes with certain type of disc injuries, you are talking about a good couple of months. With others, it's maybe 2 or 3 months. Others, it's going to be longer depending on the injury. But ligaments take a while to heal, and then we want to slowly expose them to stress again in the future. The next one is a lack of understanding of the problem. Now, if you think it's a muscle problem and it's a disc problem, I'm overly simplifying that there, but if you think it's muscular and it's not, then you're going to make the wrong decisions in terms of your rehabilitation. So things might relapse regularly there, and your return to activity. So you might go and take up running again because you feel the muscle stiffness is gone, but running is going to put pounding through that disc while it's trying to remodel and heal effectively, and that's going to lead to a relapse. And quite often it's not straight away. it's a couple of days, or maybe it's later in the day, or even the next day that the pain comes back, which again leaves you wondering. You're like a loading screen going, what on earth did I do? Why can't I get out of bed this morning? So it's understanding your problem, your back issue, is really, really important. Now, I put this next one on here, partaking in fruity exercises, mainly because I've done some of this silly stuff in the past, gotten away with it in a lot of cases. But when you think about it, there is no need to do things that have no purpose other than for the sake of them. So I use the example of people doing handstand press-ups. Why do you need to do that? There's absolutely no need to do that unless you're going to be a gymnast and perform at the Olympics or something like that. There are much, much safer and more sensible ways of doing your rehabilitation and going through your rehab process than these sorts of fruity exercises. Jumping squats is another one. Why would we be doing a jumping squat? Well, we want to stimulate some fast twitch muscle fibers, which is really, really important. And maybe we can do a video on this in the future. Fast twitch muscle fibers are really important for that reactive strength. They diminish as we get older. You lose the number of fast twitch muscle fibers, which is why people, as they get older, tend to fall a little bit more, be a little bit less easy on their feet, because you don't have those reactive muscles to quickly fire off. You've just got slow twitch muscles. But doing a explosive squat without leaving the ground eliminates any impact that you might have on your back, whereas doing a jumping squat has a lot of impact and is really not necessary. So that would be what I would classify as partaking in fruity exercises that really aren't providing anything above and beyond a normal explosive squat. The jumping squat would just be unnecessary. So that's really important. The next one is actually quite interesting, and it's a lack of progression in the rehab. It's that people are, maybe if I take our example of our Back in Shape membership, people are stuck in the phase 1. They're still doing the phase 1 exercises because they feel good. Doing the lumbar disc stretch, keeping the hips mobile, and doing the core engagement is a good process to reduce inflammation in the lower back and give that back a break. But it is doing absolutely nothing to strengthen up the muscles at all. And therefore, the rehabilitation process hasn't really taken place. The relief process has, but then we continue doing the same exercises over an extended period. And we're not objective driven. So we must have an objective there, a progression there, to make sure that we strengthen our body up. And sometimes people will move into a strengthening phase, but they start off, maybe they can do 10 squats. Maybe you can do 10 squats right now, but you could do 10 squats a week or two ago, or 3 weeks ago, and you're still only doing 10 squats. Or what's happened there? And that's where a bit of self-drive, sort of self-motivation takes place. And also things like, that's why we've put the membership group together in the premium Facebook group, because that gives you that accountability to know that I should actually be pushing it on, or asking, hey guys, should I be pushing myself? I've been doing these exercises for the last 2 weeks and I'm doing the same, or it's taking me 10 minutes or 15 minutes. What should I be doing? Well, you should be getting it down to 6 or 7 minutes. That's where you should be aiming for. So then it keeps you accountable and keeps that progression through those strengthening exercises to make sure that when you turn around 6-12 weeks down the line, you can look back and say, do you know what? I am actually objectively stronger than I was when I started this rehabilitation process. And I'm also objectively stronger than how I was, than what I was before I had the back injury. And that's important. And the last point is a pure accident. Sometimes you just have an accident. You may be in the car and a car drives straight into the back of your car while you were parked at station lights because they weren't paying attention, and something unfortunate happens. But the good news there is, if you've been through the rehab process, you are stronger. You won't have some of those barriers to recovery that you did have the very first time you injured your back. So although it can be quite the hit emotionally and psychologically, a pure accident, often you'll recover a little bit better from that than maybe other sort of points on this list here, because you've actually been doing everything right. Your body has been recovering, and it's just a minor setback that can really be bounce back from very, very quickly. So I hope this video today has been helpful for you. Just to sort of recap, our bodies are very strong. We are able to withstand an awful lot of stress and strain on the body. It is remarkably adaptive, and no one really should have a sort of a feeling of a glass back. That means you haven't done your rehab properly and things are being missed out. So you can really do a lot to strengthen and support your back, so that you be astounded to see some of the patients that we see with some of the objective issues that they have in their back, and they recover and they get back to doing all sorts of great things. So it is possible. We are remarkable, and the structure that we have is great. But we need to avoid repetitive stress and strain. We need to wisen up to the process of recovery to make sure we understand that and where we are on that recovery pathway. We need to avoid doing silly things prematurely, and we also need to make sure that our rehabilitation processes are progressive for the long term, to make sure that we can objectively look back after 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12 weeks and say, I know 100% I am stronger because I'm doing this, this, and this that I wasn't able to do before. And know that you are safer. And if you do have a pure accident, something silly happens, you have that car accident or something silly, that you know in your own mind that actually you've been through the rehab process once, you will not be set back to the same point you were at the very start of your back injury, and you really can go on to really get your back in shape. So hope that's been helpful. I wanted to kind of end it on a really positive note, hopefully. And if you guys have any questions now, we'll open for that, Lara.
This is more of just
Yeah. And also, it's not always a linear path. I think I can think of very few patients where you have a purely linear recovery pathway. A little bit of extra movement is designed to push the boundaries, and sometimes it can flare up a little bit. But it's important to stay the course, continue the progression, and not be too disarmed by any relapses that you do have. If you are in our membership group, then we always suggest, if you have a minor relapse for whatever reason that is, you jump straight back into those phase 1 exercises. You do those 3 times a day with the ice, etc., and then do that for 1 or 2 days, and then tentatively try your routine wherever you're up to in the phase 2 again, to let that and see how your body responds to that. So it can be very disheartening, especially when the pain comes back, because sciatic pain in particular is quite draining because it's a different kind of nervy pain. But follow the process, it works. Relapses can happen, and as long as you do follow that process and stick to your guns, you'll do well.
What would you say to somebody kind of following the process that they on themselves?
Don't do that. Don't do that. Look, if it's working, you're making progress. It may be a little bit faster or a little bit slower. We've made this the membership site and the protocols as widely applicable for people as possible. There will be nuanced differences. If you've just injured your back in a minor way, and there's not that much going on with it, and you won't know unless you've had proper investigation. That's the important part. This, of course, it is better if you came into the clinic, we did a full examination, went through everything correctly. But you are trying to help you back from home, and you must be aware that there are things that you don't know. So as long as you're progressing and improving, that's really important, and as long as you're not getting worse again, that is really important. But it will take longer for certain people than others. That's just the way it is.
You've signed up, and
so
did you move on to phase 2 straight away?
Yeah, so I don't think that picked up on the mic, but Lara was essentially saying that what if you're not quite pain free, but you're waiting to start phase 2, but you're not quite there. I'd always say you do need to move on to phase 2. We need to get a bit of strengthening doing. If it's just achy and bothersome, and you're actually able to get up out of your chair, go down to the kitchen, make some food, whatever it may be, if you're able to do that, then you should be seriously considering whether or not you can do phase 2 without it setting you back too much, where you can start introducing some of those, and they are very, very safe exercises. I stress they're the safest way of you strengthening up your back, actually strengthening it up, because there is a difference between the phase 1 stuff and the phase 2 stuff. Doing those simple relief-based exercises are not strengthening you up, they are relief-based. And you will need to make that jump to the phase 2 stuff at some point. And if you're mobile and you're able to walk around the house, then and definitely if you're able to walk outside of the house, you really should be considering moving on to doing some of the strengthening work. And it may say, for example, 10 reps of the dead bugs, that sort of the modified way we do them. But if you can only do 5, you can only do 5. And that's okay. Sometimes actually that's better if you can only do 5 or 3 of those reps correctly. then that's a great thing, because sometimes it's easier than the person that can jump straight up to 10, because that raises other questions that maybe this is too easy, maybe you're not doing it correctly. So bear that in mind as well. It's okay to only be able to do 3 or 5 reps of something you should be doing 10 of, because again, we can't with these programs, we can't 100% tailor them to you as the individual, because there's limits there. So you are at liberty to say, well, I can only do 3 of these at the moment, and then you work over the next week of trying to get that up to 4. And then you work on getting it up to 7, and so on and so forth. That's really important.
That was bad in the.
So this is very common, people being particularly bad first thing in the morning, having to almost get moving, feeling like you're a bit rusty first thing, can't move very well, etc., etc. And that is entirely normal. That's just the way back pain commonly is. Generally speaking, if there's instability issues, sometimes you might actually be worse later on in the day. But that first thing in the morning being uncomfortable is really quite common for the vast majority of people. That's just the way these things progress. What normally happens is that the pain is there all the time, and then it starts to be left. I'm still so stiff in the morning, but the rest of the day I'm actually a lot better. So it's because of that movement is preventing inflammation building up. Well, you've been still for 6 to 8 hours. You haven't had the effective drainage of inflammation, etc., and waste products from that region in the lower back. So you're going to be a lot more uncomfortable first thing in the morning. Get a bit of moving. Maybe that first thing you do in the morning is actually a short walk. Maybe you do your daily exercise. We've now, I think, just as of today, or it's Wednesday, I'm not 100% sure. I don't think anyone in England is sure about the guidance right now, but we've got unlimited exercise as of today or Wednesday, and use that walk. Do that first thing in the morning to get some of that inflammation pumped out by walking with a good upright posture, and then you do your exercises when you get in. That's a nice way of working around it to make it more effective. I'd say in terms of rest days, if you're going to have rest day, and sometimes we recommend this to people that are jumping between phase 1 and phase 2, when you first make the transition to phase 2, you can alternate. One day you do phase 1, one day you do phase 2, and on your rest days you might still do the phase 1 exercise routine. And yes, of course, walking around, being active is important. I'd really hope that point from the last 36 videos that we've done has hit home, that you should be active on a daily basis as best as you can. Yes, that's why I was starting to repeat them. I noticed that the mic is doing a very good job of only listening to me, which is what we like it to do, but maybe it's doing it too well today. Okay. I will endeavour to repeat the questions.
Another question, is there an easy way to tell if it's also a problem or problem?
So this is actually a common misconception, I would say. I'm about to repeat it. Is there an easy way to tell if your back is a muscle or a disc? And I'd say the reality is it can never be one or the other. That your body just doesn't work like that. You can injure the muscles, and that's very notable. You will see that there is profuse bruising if it's a serious muscular injury, but you would know you've done something. You would have done a personal best lift in the gym or something like that in order to injure those muscles. Muscles being tight and stiff is not a muscle problem. That is a reaction to something that is injured. So for the default approach to this, I would assume that your back pain is something structural. It's affected the discs in a minor way, maybe, but that will result in some sort of injury to the joint. Will result in a degree of muscle spasm. So the reality is you can't have one without the other, but you have to recognize that the muscle component of your back pain is a reaction to the injury of a joint, be it the discs, the facets, a combination of many of them. I think we did this a couple of weeks ago on the whiteboard, or a couple of sessions ago on the whiteboard, where I said, look, you can't injure this part of the disc without injuring this part of the facets and the ligaments and the capsules, because they all work together. They all move at the same time. You can't injure one without the other. There's such an interconnected nature of these muscles and ligaments and tendons and discs in our spine, that you can't injure one without the other. So you have a segmental issue. There's going to be a little bit of strain of the disc. There's going to be a little bit of strain of the interspinal ligaments, and there's going to be a little bit of a strain of the facet joints and the capsule, etc. And there's going to be some strain and reaction from the small muscles around the spine. And then there will be that protective splinting and spasm of the larger muscle groups around the spine. That is a back injury. It's never going to affect one structure without having others being involved. And unless, as I say, your primary mode of injury has been a severely heavy lift, far in excess of anything you ever lifted, well, you'd know that anyway, and you'd have profuse, a very notable muscle tear, which would give you large amounts of bruising. And if you've done that, you must have damaged the weight-bearing, load-bearing structures at the same time. So I really would discard this notion of having a back muscle problem. It's not helpful for actually treating the thing properly. And if you've just torn a muscle, even if you're saying it's not significant enough to bruise it, why on earth would you want to pull it even more? I mean, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So the stretches for muscle spasm, because you've torn it and injured it, really don't make much sense.
What about jumping exercises?
No.
Are they completely unsuitable?
Why do you need, if you're going to be a high jumper, go to the Olympics and win a gold medal, then do jumping exercises. If you're not going to be paid for jumping, or why, we have to take it back to the logical standpoint of why are we exercising? What is the purpose behind our exercising? If our exercising is to improve our fitness and general health and well-being, then jumping exercises is premature and unhelpful. If you want to do a bit of plyometrics, I'd say get your body sorted out and able to do proper static stability-based exercises. Really, this isn't the question of jumping exercises is not for a forum dealing with people with back pain. It's for an athletic enhancement and an athletic optimization YouTube channel. Maybe we'll turn into that in the future. But if you're an athlete looking to improve your explosiveness or those sorts of things, you wouldn't have back pain right now. Or if you've got back pain right now, you need to focus on this, and that can come much further on down the line once everything's recovered and you're in a good situation.
The last question from me: would you recommend going into what limb?
So we actually include single limb exercises. The question is, when should we go into single limb exercises? Well, to be honest, you start that straight away. We've got the marching bridges that are there as single limb. You've got the dead bugs, which are single limb. When you move into the bands-based protocols in phase 2, there are lunges and other exercises that involve single limb and single or unilateral loading on the spine to help it deal with a more dynamic approach to core stability, or provide a more dynamic approach to core stability. So we start you off straight away actually with unilimb or uneven loading on that core, uneven activation on that core in the way of the marching bridges and the dead bugs, and then we progress that on to upright exercises. Maybe it's going to be the lunges with the bands, maybe it's some of the other ones that we do, which are using an uneven load on our body and asking that core to react appropriately to provide stability to the back. So that is actually really integral to the recovery process, because it makes you and your back much more resilient to injury. Maybe you miss that step and all of a sudden there's a load going through one side of your body and your core has to reactively brace and engage. Well, that's what you're preparing for when you're doing those marching bridges in the phase 2, the first phase 2 exercises, is shifting your weight from one side to the other whilst your core is having to stabilize and protect your spine. It's just a safe way of doing that, and we build that out through the protocols anyway. So yeah, I mean, if you want to read more about the Back in Shape membership site, then we've got that. There'll be a link to that in the description underneath if you're not already a member. And if you are a member, I hope this has really helped you understand why, or a little bit about that progression there, because that's really a very key principle around the Back in Shape protocols. Any other questions, Lara?
That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining again today. It's been really good fun. There have been some really good questions. I hope the content has been useful and informative for you as well as you're watching this. Again, if you do find these helpful, or you know someone that would benefit from a little bit of advice and guidance, then please do share these on social media, share the YouTube or the Facebook channel. That would be really appreciated. We're rapidly approaching 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is an awesome milestone. So really excited about that. So every one of you that subscribe, we're really appreciative of you all. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow with another live stream. Watch out on the YouTube and on the Facebook, because we'll upload what time that'll be as well. And have a great day, and see you tomorrow with another live stream.